This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report, as we return to our conversation with David House, co-founder of the Bradley Manning Support Network.
I am stopped. My electronics are usually asked to power this up, make sure it works, etc., weird stuff like that. They haven't seized anything electrical since that November affair. But I am asked about my connections with people, where I've been traveling to at points, my views on the Iraq War, Afghanistan War, about my association with Bradley Manning, et cetera, et cetera. And these questions have gotten less and less over time, which is good. But it's
do you answer the questions?
It depends on what the question is.
What do you answer them when they ask you, what are your views on the Iraq and Afghanistan war?
I tell them what's none of their business, usually. It's not any of their business. And when they ask me who I've been staying with or where I've been going, again, it's none of their business. I mean, these are questions that they're asking you to volunteer information at the border. And as a U.S. citizen, I don't believe we have the obligation to answer the questions of CBP at the border searches. I think that if they want information, they can obtain a subpoena or obtain a warrant. But they don't have either of those at the border, and this authority to actually question individuals about their legal associations, political associations, is claimed by the U.S. government. It was not granted to them. So I don't answer these questions.
Have the authorities ever seized your laptop again?
No, they have not.
They've never taken it out of your possession?
Nope. No. And I would know if they did. I maintain pretty much uninterrupted physical control of my computer at all times to make sure that it's not compromised by the government in any way. So, yeah, they don't take it.
I wanted to ask you, David, about what Julian Assange said in the conversation I had with him this July 4th weekend in London. He talked about the grand jury.
That grand jury involves 19 to 23 people selected from that area. Now, why was it in Alexandria, Virginia, 6 kilometers center of Washington, that that grand jury was placed and those people drawn? Well, it has the highest density of government employees anywhere in the United States. The US government was free to select the place, and they selected this place in order to bias the jury from the very beginning. This is in fact wrong to call a jury. This is a type of medieval star chamber. There are these 19 to 23 individuals from the population that are sworn to secrecy. They cannot consult with anyone else. There is no judge, there is no defense counsel, and there are 4 prosecutors. So that is why people that are familiar with grand jury inquiries in the United States say that a grand jury would not only indict a ham sandwich, it would indict the ham and the sandwich. And that's a real threat to us.
That was Julian Assange critiquing the whole grand jury system. You went before the grand jury. Can you talk about it, David?
So the grand jury, as I understand it, is investigating the associations between Julian Assange and Bradley Manning, the alleged associations between them. As I understand it, it was convened around November of last year, and has been running ever since. Recently, subpoenas have been issued to members of the Bradley Manning Support Network and others in the Boston area. I myself have been among these people that has subpoena issued. And so I had to go to the grand jury on June 15, 2011, just a few weeks ago. Because
in Alexandria?
Right. And I was commanded to testify before the grand jury. Everything I knew about Bradley Manning and WikiLeaks, even Jacob Applebaum, people of that sort. During the grand jury, I refused to answer any questions aside from my name and address, pleading the Fifth Amendment, well, the Fifth, First, and Fourth Amendments to every other question that was asked during the grand jury. And it was quite a controversy, actually, because despite the fact that the 6 AUSAs, assistant U.S. attorneys that were present, were very upset by this, they were also very upset at my note-taking and tried to get me to stop taking notes the entire time, saying things such as, I would like to state for the record Mr. House is not answering the question, is instead taking notes, and kind of ridiculing me openly for doing that, saying, you know, oh, did you get the last question? Did you get everything down? Da-da-da-da, right? So very odd, very frantic atmosphere within the grand jury. And adding to the franticness was the fact that outside the windows of the grand jury, you could see the WikiLeaks truck driving by every 15 minutes or so. This artistic van that had the giant WikiLeaks logo on the side and said WikiLeaks Mobile Information Collection Unit would drive by, and the grand jury would kind of crack up a little bit. So very odd atmosphere, but I felt pretty good about it because I had given no information away, and I had got a list of questions that they were trying to.
What were the questions that they were asking you?
The questions centered around Bradley Manning's time in Cambridge, Massachusetts in January 2010, who he had associated with there. And then questions about Jacob Applebaum, oddly enough, and other security researchers in the U.S. And I've worked with my attorney to provide these questions with the attorneys of other individuals being investigated in this case.
So you're not cooperating?
Oh, of course not. No. No, it was unconscionable to cooperate with this grand jury. The grand jury is obviously politically motivated, and it's... I can't imagine a principled activist for Bradley Manning or for WikiLeaks cooperating with this investigation in any way. And it's been said by others in the Boston area that they will not cooperate, even if they are compelled to testify before the grand jury. So it seems to be this is like a commonly held belief within the Boston area. In fact, the day that I was actually called to testify, there was a protest happening outside the Alexandria courthouse and also in Boston against the grand jury and the politically motivated investigation of WikiLeaks currently happening in the States. And in my mind, this kind of reeks of the Pentagon Papers investigation. I mean, Richard Nixon's DOJ 40 years ago attempted to kind of curtail the freedoms of the press and politically regulate the press through the use of policy created around the espionage investigation of the New York Times. I feel the WikiLeaks case we have going on now provides Obama's DOJ ample opportunity to kind of continue this attempt to politically regulate the U.S. media. And so I'm very worried about this happening, and I think this grand jury is a step in that process.
Can you talk about the Boston University Tech Center builds?
Builds is a what some call a hackerspace. It's really just a place for computer-savvy youth or people who want to become computer-savvy to gather and learn more about the computer trade in general. So it kind of operates on this open-door policy where if you want to know how to solder electronics and you don't know how, you can come into Builds and we'll teach you. If you want to know how to build a robot or program or even do something artistic, we'll teach you. So Builds is kind of one of these open spaces that we hope will empower people through the use of technology. And it's very indicative, I feel, of the culture in Boston. People and youth who are empowered through their use of tech, both socially and otherwise. So that was the kind of foundational aspect of Builds that was very important for me in the Boston area. And I think Bradley Manning was attracted to Builds for that very reason as well.
So did you spend a lot of time with Bradley, or was it a brief?
No, it was only very brief, actually, which is very odd as why I was targeted so much when the Army CID came to Boston in June. It was as if anyone who had had even infrequent contacts with Bradley Manning were being targeted. And that's what was very bizarre to me.
Has Builds come under the government microscope completely?
Oh, yes, it sure has, and it's completely ridiculous. I mean, the government wants a very easy-to-digest media narrative about the whole WikiLeaks investigation out there. So the Frontline PBS piece, for example, tried to infer that the Builds hackerspace had somehow helped Bradley Manning leak to traffic documents or something like that. Completely ridiculous, completely erroneous stuff, right? He was there for one night, but because it fit the predetermined narrative, because Builds has the word hacker associated with it in some way, it's kind of been spun out by the U.S. government as if this group is somehow responsible for what they would call espionage. So it has been very hard, dealing with a group of students in Boston who were interested primarily in learning and in exploration and in doing what they feel is best for student culture, not coming under attack by the U.S. government in a very ham-fisted investigation. It is very sad and very bizarre. And I think it shows really how frantic the U.S. government is to link Julian Assange and Bradley Manning. I mean, they will do anything and railroad over any organization they can in order to make this connection. And I think it's very unfortunate. And it's a sign of weakness on their part.
Have you come to know Bradley a good deal on these visits that you've had?
Remarkably, yes. It's funny how, I mean, our conversations are limited, right? So we can't talk about WikiLeaks, we can't talk about things relating to the case because we are being recorded. So we have to talk about philosophical ideals or things in the abstract or mathematics or computer science. And so through this we've developed quite a strong intellectual bond. And he's a very intelligent young man. I think that when and if he's released from prison, he may have a career as a professor or a career as a statesman ahead of him. He's that level of intelligence, and I'm glad to have known him.
what do you think is the possibility he will be released? And when is there going to be a trial?
That's absolutely up to the amount of support he gets through the American public. If the American public stand up and demand his release and demand a fair trial for him and his due process, I feel he may actually get a fair trial, and he may not spend very long in prison at all. But if that does not happen, then people like Mike Huckabee calling for his execution, those voices will speak louder, and he may well be executed, and that's what's very alarming.